All right, American history students, let's finish this unit out with lesson 6, the effects of World War One. So, as always, all these lessons in the first unit are dealing with imperialism and how it changed our role. And since imperialism was a reason why World War One started, this obviously changes our role since we were on the winning side, which we'll see here in a little bit. Today's lesson is going to focus on the effects of World War One, to be able to pull them out, and as always, just be ready to explain them. So, I can identify and explain the effects of World War One had on the United States is the main gist of today. So, why does all this matter? Is because how World War One left off and how it basically was negotiated, and what we're going to discuss, called the Treaty of Versailles, is what's going to cause World War II to happen. So, gentleman on the left, you recognize him with a little bit less of a mustache, named Adolf Hitler, is going to be super honked off on how Germany is treated in post World War One, and he's going to promise of regaining the respect that Germany lost, which led into World War II. And then gentleman on the right is Benito Mussolini. He's going to be somebody that's going to be also be honked off on how Italy was taken advantage of, and then basically not repaid the promise of land that they were once given or once made to. And then they're going to basically join forces, and they're going to be the main bad guys of World War II. So that's kind of why all this matters. But going into the U.S. entry, so because of the Lusitania sinking, because of the Zimmerman note, we just say to our homies, we're coming in and we're going to start fighting. So when the soldiers of World War One on the Allied side first see the United States people start coming rolling in, they're wondering, why are you here? Okay, we didn't have any skin in the game. We weren't fighting on their land, but the supplies that they brought, the manpower that they brought, was a welcome change. So something to keep in mind, this stat here of 39% of the U.S. soldiers were either immigrants or sons of immigrants, is why, again, people felt uneasy about all this. But Germany, knowing what the United States was going to bring to the table, they wanted to make all attempt to end the war before the United States got their soldiers trained and deployed to Europe, but it didn't work. And all the while, why this was a welcome addition from the United States is because Russia dropped out. There's something that we're going to be talking about in world history called the Bolshevik Revolution, and also known as the Russian Revolution. And this is where you're going to see Russia is going to be from capitalist to now become communist. And this is going to be revisited when we get into the Cold War, and how things are going to basically be a power struggle between the United States and the Soviet Union. So what else is going to happen during this time? The United States soldier is going to basically be operating in such a way that they're just not going to give in. So therefore, we didn't really go on to the huge offensive. We didn't have to. Germany was running low on supplies, and we basically just outlasted them. So on November 11th, at the 11th hour of 1918, you're going to see that World War I is officially going to end. Then known as Armistice Day is eventually going to become Veterans Day, and you can see the impact here. So how many people died in Europe, how many people died in just the United States soldier-wise, how much we spent, how many innocent civilians died in Europe, which is a tragedy. Which then leads into our first question of, at the end of World War I, the United States, eventually became known as what holiday, the actual day that we ended on. So you're going to see Woodrow Wilson, prior to the United States joining in, he is actually going to call his shot. He is going to call basically a peace with victory has to take place. And basically what he's going to say is that whoever is going to be on the losing end of this better not have any hard feelings, and it's going to be up to the people that win World War I not to rub it in. And this speech that he points all this out in is eventually going to be known as the birth of the 14-point plan, which more about that here in a little bit. So if you really want to read some of this, you can. This paragraph kind of sums up the thoughts of it. If you really want to know in a nutshell what it's saying, is basically saying you cannot rub in the fact that you win, is basically in a nutshell what it is. But when you go into how all this transpires into post-World War I, Woodrow Wilson representing the United States, is going to tell people inside of Europe, and on the winning side, we need to have some sort of check. We need to have some sort of government for the world's governments. And this was his baby called the League of Nations. So basically, as I just described it, representatives from each country are going to represent where they come from, and whatever problem they have, they're going to be able to talk it out, and they're not going to lead to another world war happening. But another world war is coming, and you guys know this. So you're going to notice that all the good guys that are negotiating for the Treaty of Versailles or the end of World War I are going to put direct blame on Germany. So going back to Hitler, when I said before, he's going to take all this personally, and this is going to be the reason why World War II starts. You're also going to see that they also have to pay a lot of people back, and that's what's going to lead them into a depression before the Great Depression actually happens. But you can see battle lines, or not battle lines, border lines are going to change in Europe. Empires are going to be broken apart. New countries are going to start. So if you want to look at that, you can. That's more of a world history thing. But if you can imagine, some people that were once part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire are now part of the Yugoslavia country. So this kind of gives a little bit of identity crisis inside of Europe after World War I. And let's lead to question number 2. So who took the most blame for causing World War I to happen? So when Woodrow Wilson gets home, he's going to want to pass on to Congress, hey, we should join this League of Nations. Hey, we should accept this Treaty of Versailles. But Congress wanted no part of it. They just wanted to stay completely out of European affairs. They wanted to make sure that they just took care of what was happening in the United States. Woodrow Wilson, clearly not happy about this, since it was his baby. He goes on a speaking tour. And on this speaking tour, he basically wore himself out. He ended up having a massive stroke when he was out on the road. So as a result of basically his idea not being accepted by Congress, the United States is not going to join the League of Nations. And if you can think about it, the country that came up with the idea isn't buying into it. It's almost deemed for failure, which you're going to see in World War II when we get to those. So here's my question for you. So the U.S. joined the League of Nations, true or false?